And hello, welcome to Broadsheet on the Telly. I'm Neil Curran. We have a smaller panel. You're very welcome in our audience. So joining me tonight is obviously I'm not John Ryan. John Ryan is having Wi-Fi issues in his bunker and shelter out in the wilds of the world. But joining me on the panel tonight, we've got Luke Brennan all the way from Portugal.
Hey Neil.
It's the quietest Luke has ever been.
Yeah, that's all good here anyway. I suppose not much of a difference from last week. Same old here in Porto. But no, it's moving on, right? The world is getting smaller, but more chaotic.
Yeah, absolutely. And sure, we'll get to all that crack soon, so we will. Then a celebrity accountant, leader of the free world around the boundaries of Crumlin. We have Vanessa Foran. Hi, Vanessa.
Hi, everyone. The leader of the free world. I like that. Only free in the front room here.
And then the leader of the wider free world, the man with a plan, Mr. Johnny Keenan, all the way in Kilkenny.
Thanks very much, Neil. Yeah, I have a plan. I just need a platform now. Well, look, we have one. Can I just say that an awful lot of people didn't recognize me, according to Broadsheet, from the last time we were on 2 weeks ago, even though we did like 89 shows over a 2-year period. So just to say, I don't pretend that people do know me, but I just kind of took it that people might have tuned in to those 89 shows that are still online. I think that people can learn an awful lot from. And so my name is Johnny Keenan. I'm a mere mortal. Happy to be here in virtual reality with you guys tonight. So,
well, that's not fair, Johnny, because we know that despite having a celebrity accountant on the panel, that your list of demands for the return of Broadsheet on the Telly was a lot longer than Vanessa's.
I'd be interested in knowing what were Johnny's demands, actually.
Well, he insisted on Ballygown sparkling rather than Ballygown still as his drink.
I've only got tap water here, and there's Johnny getting treated to sparkling water, Ballygown as well.
1 out of 103 demands ain't bad, Luke. That's what I'm saying.
You're not supposed to drink the tap water in Porto, are you, Luke?
You can, yeah. Filter 50 grand. Sure, there's worse things around, right?
There is. And we may have 1 or 2 guests joining us as the proceedings go on. But I guess the big news of the day is the big news that we had last week. Has much changed since 2 weeks ago? Has much changed in the last 2 weeks? I guess no harm in checking in our respective regions. Maybe we'll start with you, Luke, because you're the furthest on the panel tonight. How are things faring in Porto and in Portugal?
Well, good. I mean, personally, I suppose everyone the first protocol is are all your sort of friends and family safe and well, and I have no problems there. One of the people I work with back in Dublin seems to have gone down with the coronavirus, which is a bit worrying, but hopefully there won't be too much problem. But generally, muchness, sort of getting used to the solitary life. I think it's funny, even sort of walking around, you notice, I mean, there's areas here that you get for a walk, I walk most days, it's funny to notice the thing are different. I mean, obviously there's people around, but even in terms of the homeless people, sort of who used to sort of fall into the crowd, they're sort of more apparent now. They're sort of.
Sorry, is it just me? Is there's Luke sound off?
Sorry, is that better?
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry about that. But I was just saying that, it's funny the way things change. You notice even things like the homeless people, sort of are left behind out in the streets, when everyone else is tucked away inside, and it's sort of they usually fall into somewhere, get hidden in the crowds. I suppose there's a lot of changes in a lot of different ways for a lot of people, and that's sort of, I suppose we're sort of moving into a new situation with the world where we have to be a bit more sort of aware of the people on the fringes. I suppose we've all had time to think, and I've been thinking about even sort of this is going to be very challenging to society, to all societies, because I think the end result of this is going to probably be a more unequal society. I think it's those that are sort of the front line, those that are sort of working face to face with people are going to be losing their jobs for a year or two, and like they tend to be sort of on average sort of the people who are paid less, and then the people who if you look at Dublin, where if you want to make a crude division between, you've got the people working in Dublin, and then you've got the sort of the Google and Facebook, etc. crowd in there as well, and they're all grand, they're like sitting at home now and sort of wondering what's going to do with the extra money that they've got in their bank account now, because it's all adding up, and it's going to be tricky for the rest of them. I lost my I had a brother and a sister lost their job this week or last week, and a sister-in-law as well. One was working in film, one was working in the with the airline industry. Another was working like doing door-to-door sales, and it really is sort of quite a blow to the sort of the dignity of people to sort of lose a job like that, and that's what sort of shocks me, that we're in this situation where I've always believed that work is fundamental to people for their dignity, and you have this new situation where it's looking like 15 to 20% of Ireland, Portugal, most countries in Europe will be losing their jobs, and how their dignity is maintained is probably an important part of how we go forward. So I suppose maybe I'm being a bit too thinking a bit too much about it, but I just think that there's all those challenges are ahead of us. Beyond, I saw a good analysis of it, there was a Spanish hotelier, and he said that you've actually got three crises. You've got the health crisis, which we're dealing with, then you've got the crisis of movement, where people, even when the flights start up again, it'll be a long time before the airlines start putting up flights that are half empty. It's going to be a trickle in, and then even after that, sort of crisis of confidence. I was saying to a friend, are people going to still shake hands in a year's time? Like in 2 years' time? Is this going to totally sort of change how we interact? So. There are all these very big social changes on the way, and I suppose I've been maybe thinking about them as well as everything. But so, a lot going on.
Yeah.
Luke isn't giving us much to look forward to when we're able to go around and hug and kiss again.
Don't invite Luke around to do the entertainment at birthday parties.
Virtual high five, Luke.
I did catch a headline before we came on that said that the coronavirus is now considered the deadliest virus in the world, which beats tuberculosis. But yeah, you're right. The world will have changed. Will we be shaking hands in a year's time? I would definitely say we will be.
So do I.
However, what that handshake looks like, maybe.
But not Neil, you just said there you saw a headline about the tuberculosis. This is the coronavirus, the COVID-19 virus is more deadlier than the tuberculosis. But tuberculosis is pretty much eliminated because of vaccines.
Yeah,
and it still appears. It's quite common to catch it in the subways and the tube.
Yeah, and I guess we'll find out in the months to come. Is this going to be a reoccurring? I was going to say flu, or reoccurring illness every winter, and what does that mean? And we don't know yet, but certainly the evidence or not the evidence, but the word from the medical community is it's unlikely, but we'll find out. But just something you mentioned, Luke, and maybe Johnny will throw this out to yourself. There's only so much of a lockdown that I think the public, generally speaking, can sustain before there's a deterioration and a detrimental impact to mental health and a further erosion, of our quality of life. And obviously that's not something that is covered in any depth in the media at this point. But I guess, well, maybe Johnny or anyone else on the panel. And hi, Derek. Welcome, Derek. Derek has joined us. Derek O'Donoghue has joined us from sunny California. But how
sorry about that. The technology let me down, believe it or not. I was looking at a beach ball here for 5 minutes.
He's just rubbing it in now. He's in the sunshine. He's looking at beach balls. But yeah, how are you guys holding up mentally during this time, or where's the spirits at?
Well, you say lockdown, Neil. It's the not known, really, I suppose, that has everyone kind of concerned. It was the 29th was the first date to have to be kind of, wary. And then now the 19th of April, or the Easter Sunday, which is the 12th, is it?
12th.
So the resurrection and all that coincides with that, which is interesting. Good PR for the Christians. But will we all be able to leave our house and go further than 2 kilometers? The restrictions that's put on, I'm just talking about Ireland, I suppose, because that's mostly what I know about. If you were to look at them objectively, you'd be looking at, they're kind of almost long-term restrictions, because it's not a lot of effort for the short term. But this is what it comes down to, because we don't know. I definitely am a fan of lockdown. I think we should have the airports locked down as well. I know repatriation and is part of the essential flights, but I'd just like to know a little bit more about who's coming into the country, to be honest with you. And I think, we just have to kind of get through it the best way we can, because South Korea, and we talked about this the last time, but you were telling me about the information that you were getting from Eugene and stuff. And South Korea, I think, are definitely the yardstick, the template to go on, and China have it almost turned as well, and that seems to be a 3-month process. So even though we don't know exactly when we're getting out, I think it's kind of, if we look towards where China and South Korea have dealt with it, and even Italy and Spain are the ones in Europe that kind of follow the lead and just stay cool. Like, this is actually all new. So it's if you were told a month ago that the whole country was going to shut down and you get 300 odd quid for sitting at home, you'd actually be all right about it when you think about it. So there's no real need for hysteria. Everyone, as I said, like last time, Pulp Fiction, be cool, like Falsies. Everyone just be cool and read, learn, play with your kids, whatever you do. I'm looking at Jinx. And, we just engage in a completely other different way. To be honest with you, I'm into self-isolation a long time. I'd love to be working, because as you said, you have to have a sense of worth, and people thinking like, even though they don't have a job now, and I didn't really want to get into this now, but maybe if we look at what's going to happen afterwards, there's going to be a new form of economy. Definitely. What we know as an economy is gone, but what will happen again, it will be a new form of economy. So now is the time to take stock and just appreciate what life is, and in relation to where you want to go as an individual, and then be part of the bigger conversation in relation to solidarity. And Ireland is great at this for Team Ireland, the term I don't like particularly, but it's trending. It's like, just be positive, and why not for the short term, even though we don't have an end in sight. But I'd be quite positive about some good things happening anyway.
Can I give you a positive on that point you made about South Korea? Like, actually in South Korea, like, they aren't in lockdown, they're just a bit more specific. So in South Korea now, like, the shops are open and like restaurants are open and all that. I mean, the rules are in place in terms of social distancing or whatever, but like, it's more that they have like very good tracing in effect. And, so if that, for example, like someone up in Glasnevin has coronavirus and there's been 6 people there, there's no one anywhere else in the South County Dublin, you stay away from Glasnevin, right?
Yeah.
And that's kind of how they do it. Now, there's a sort of bit of a sort of an impingement on civil liberties that comes with that. But I suppose there'll be decisions that countries will have to make about, like, are they going to allow, sort of an impingement on civil liberties of the person in order for the sort of the country to sort of be able to sort of exist and the economy to keep going and all that. So I suppose it's, but like, it can be done. We don't have to be in absolute lockdown for the next 6 months in order to sort of stop the virus growing. It can be stopped, but we can still keep moving.
But South Korea were in lockdown for a period, though.
For a month, yeah.
For a month. And China, 52 days, I think.
Like that. But what they were more specific, because like particular areas, like sort of Wuhan, where the virus was found, that was completely locked down, and they closed all the. But I understand what, like, for example, the Irish and Portuguese governments are doing, where they say, okay, well, let's be careful here. Let's shut everything down first of all, and then let's see what we can actually, sort of when we know a bit about it. And even in terms of, like, in 1 month's time, they'll have like 100 different scenarios to look at. Whereas before they only had 1 or 2 examples of what worked or didn't work and whatever. So, but I think I think we're going to be in complete lockdown for 6 months. I don't think that's going to be. It's going to be a lot better than that.
6 months, Luke?
The governor.
I said I don't think we'll be in lockdown for 6 months.
Oh, sorry.
Not complete lockdown. I think it's going to be a lot better than that. I think in 3 to 4 weeks they'll sort of start realizing that, like, breaking it down into different cells where sort of they realize that they trace particular areas and keep where the virus is prevalent sort of quiet, and sort of allow other people to get on with their lives in other places. I think that's how it will be.
Sorry, Neil, beg your pardon. Just on that point then, when in Ireland, they're just giving out the figures, east, north, south, and west. Well, north is Northern Ireland, obviously, so that's a different kettle of figures and stuff and how it's translated. But should it not be more specific? Because I think it's fair to say that an awful lot of the deaths are in Dublin because of the population alone. And I don't know whether there should be more specific about where the actual deaths are. I'm just putting it out there, but I just think...
Just to go back to Luke's point about shutting down, or about the lockdown, the governor in California here announced yesterday that schools were finished for this year, like actually going to school. They're going to start distance learning after spring break or the Easter break, but there'll be no actual physical school here in California until next September at the earliest.
Yeah, I think did they say tonight that the Leaving Cert is going to go ahead as planned? Again, I caught a headline. I didn't get to read any text on it. Does anyone know if the Leaving Cert is going to happen in June?
I heard it was cancelled yesterday, but that was April Fool's, I think.
Oh, Henry Shefflin has joined us.
Yeah, hello. If we could give a little warm welcome to Stefan Anderson. Hi, Stefan. You're very welcome to Broadsheet on the Telly.
Hey,
Stefan.
I'm glad to be here. Sorry for missing the first part of it. I probably got the time zones mixed up or something. I thought it was like 8:30 or something in where you are, but apparently it's 9:30.
It wouldn't be Broadsheet on the Telly if we didn't have technical stuff like this every week. Don't worry. And so yeah, Stefan, I want to invite Stefan on tonight because Stefan's based in Stockholm in Sweden. And for anyone who's following what's happening in the rest of the world, Sweden has taken a very different approach in contrast to most European countries in how the crisis has been handled. So sorry to throw you in the deep end there, Stefan. But how are things in Stockholm? What are what's the government's measures like, and how are people feeling about the whole thing? Maybe give us a little bit of insight as to what is actually happening.
Well, I think we're just now sort of experiencing real problems with, like, numbers of deaths rising. Before that, it's been mainly a thing that's going on elsewhere. We're still at a level where I think up until last week, we could still have like gatherings of up to 500 people. Now it's been shrunk to 50 people. Schools are still open, except for like schools for teenagers and older, those are now closed. But like it's very different from what I'm reading in the news and what I'm seeing in my Facebook feed. So Sweden is a lot more, at least when it comes to like government measures, a lot more relaxed about it, I think. So
your primary schools and preschools, am I correct in saying that they're still open? And
yeah,
public gatherings, there is a cap on numbers, I think at 50 people. Is that still?
yeah, that's correct.
So
And I think the reasoning for having these schools still being open is that like these kids have to be somewhere, and if they're not in school, they're probably going to spend time with their grandparents, which is much worse, or they will have to be kept at home with their parents who are working, many of them in medical fields. So I think that's the reasoning behind having these schools still being open. And it seems to me that most people that I talk to are sort of behind the current policy as it is right now, at least.
so it is generally supported by people, generally speaking, or is there a growing concern or a growing desire for a more tighter lockdown, maybe similar to what's happened in neighboring states like Denmark and Finland?
It's kind of hard to tell because obviously I'm just seeing those people that I know. And I mean, yeah, there are people that feel like we should have a lot stricter measures being put in place. But like, I feel like most people that I'm hearing are more in the camp of feeling that the one who's in charge of this, well, it might be a good thing to say that like the way things are being run in Sweden when it comes to these things is that politicians in general stay out of it. So the person who we see on the TV all the time is Anders Tegnell, who's in charge of the now I'm trying to figure out what it would be in English, like the agency. What do you call it in English?
This sort of health service.
Yeah, yeah. So basically, he's the one who's calling the shots, and the prime minister is basically saying, "Yeah, we're doing whatever they want," and the opposition is also like, "Yeah, they're experts, so they should be calling all the shots." And I think most people are also like, yeah, they're experts. They probably know what's best.
Stefan, how many people have passed away?
Good question. I should probably know this. Like, I guess 500 or so, maybe ish.
And that hasn't sparked alarm at all. That
Sorry?
hasn't sparked alarm.
I mean,
amongst the population.
I mean, comparing to how bad it is in a lot of other places, I mean, we're still nowhere near where Italy is, and I think we're all seeing what's going to come, and are sort of prepared that people will be dying. And this is going to be a problem for a very, very long time. And it would probably be like that regardless of what we do. So I think people are, I mean, obviously no one would feel like it's okay that people are dying, but it's just how it's gonna have to be.
It's interesting because I was talking about this with somebody earlier. You know, we can, you know, as with us all here being in countries that are under tighter lockdown, I guess there's probably for us almost a jaw-dropping moment when, when we hear what you say because of what we've gone through. But I guess there is a sense of we are following, and I think this came up when we talked on the show the last time. There is a sense that we are following the guidance of our government officials, and
It's not true. No, the HSE.
yeah, that's what I mean, Johnny. That's what I
Yeah,
mean.
but they're not government on it.
Close enough. Close
No,
enough.
no, they're not. They're not. They're not. The government comes and goes. They're there. They're working the whole time.
They make the recommendations to the
As,
government.
as Stefan said,
either way.
no. We touched on it last week, there, a fortnight ago. It's been proven that Leo Varadkar, they're reading press releases. In Sweden, they don't tolerate that kind of shit. They have the professionals on there, and they let the professionals talk. No, it's no platform for electioneering. So,
well, I think what I find was interesting though with Sweden, Stefan, is there does seem to be a growing divide within the medical community in Sweden. But like you say, the head of the health service is calling the shots on it. And I know there was a petition with over 2,000 medical professionals had signed, and there was one professor in the virology, if that's the correct term, department in one of the major universities, and she was saying that Sweden's on the road to catastrophe. And it's just unusual because when you look at a lot of the other European countries, generally speaking, there is a consensus with approach that, stricter entire measures. So it'll be interesting to see, how that evolves in the coming days and weeks in Sweden and how the public reacts to it.
Neil, did you hear the Lieutenant Governor from Texas? He sort of called on grandparents to take a hit for the economy. He said that, people are going to die. It's up to grandparents to step forward and, take the hit. It'll be all people who will die, and the economy will recover. This phrase was common the last couple of weeks. The cure is worse than the disease. Even Trump was coming out with that last week, and this notion that sort of people are expendable. But all folks don't. They should take one for the team, as if it was like World War. And I thought it was the most sickening thing I ever heard, that an elected official was calling on just all people to be sacrificed.
Yeah, but you're not going to hear that kind of talk now anymore, because both Trump and Boris, they've completely changed their tune because the press have turned against them. If you saw the headlines today and yesterday were very different to what they were 2, 3, 4 weeks ago, or even at around the time of Brexit or the British general election. And even Fox have turned against Trump now. Trump is all over the shop. Trump will be doing well to even make it to November.
Well, he made his latest press conference. He used more harsher language. He talked about it's going to be the toughest 2 weeks, something to that effect. I'm paraphrasing, but his language has changed completely. But still, at a state level, and maybe Derek, you probably know a little bit more about it. But I think in Florida, they've now finally locked down, and Florida was probably the wild child in terms of their approach, and they've finally locked down, but they've made exceptions for church congregations and religious gatherings.
That sounds kind of crazy, doesn't it? Considering, I don't know, I'm guessing people are familiar with the case in Korea where like there was a particular church that was a bit of a sect, but like it was one person, a sort of super spreader within that church, ended up causing about 80% of the infections in Korea, and it was a constant gathering of people all the time, so it seems to me quite crazy that they would exclude. I suppose a lot of time the people sort of like the churches are supporting the politicians and they have to keep their congregation together.
But Sweden, on the other hand, seems to be, Stefan, welcome to the show. Seems to be a very liberal kind of society. And I was actually looking on Euronews there the other night, and that's where I seen at first that everyone was sitting around Catholic culture is at its peak. Well, not at its peak, but what you do on a daily basis, and the schools and working closed. So just to give you, there's a great app, covidvisualizer.com, and you just tap on the country and it gives you the information. So far, Sweden has 5,557 active, 308 deceased, 103 recovered, and today 621 cases and 69 deceased.
Where's that?
Sweden. And then if you look at the bordering countries of Finland, Finland has 19 deceased. Norway has 50 deceased. Denmark, let me see.
But this all goes back
Denmark
to the
is
testing,
123.
though.
It does, but also the fact of the matter is, I'd like to know from Stefan. Boris Johnson taught the other week that he could actually have the herd element of the virus, the herding, which Sweden seems to be taking on board. Have they, in your knowledge and information of just living there, have Sweden kind of thing tends to look at towards Britain in an awful lot of ways anyway. So did they look at what Johnson was saying a few weeks ago? But why would you think Sweden have almost, outside of everyone else, are doing this, and it doesn't seem to be working in relation to if you look at the neighboring countries, for example?
Yeah, well, I definitely hear a lot of people talking about herd immunity, and that seems to be where we are hoping to end up, because I think it would probably be impossible to contain it so much that it would go away. So we're probably going to be in this for a very long time. I don't know if it's inspired by the British, or how that strategy came to be. But I think also a major reason why I think we're doing the more relaxed measures is that I think since we're expecting to be in it for so many months. One argument that I've heard is that if you would go for a complete lockdown early on, you would have a great risk of having people in maybe 2 months' time getting really tired of being at home and then going out when it's much, much worse than it is right now. The current measures that we have now are set to expire December 31st. So that means we're probably going to be in this for another, 8-9 months. So it's going to be a while.
Yeah, that's more of a gamble, though, isn't it? Because it hasn't been proven yet if you get the virus that you can't get it a second time.
They're saying it's unlikely, but they haven't definitive proof yet.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, and as I say, it's not personal, because when Boris started this 2 weeks ago, it was like, what? And he was of the Trump mentality. Obviously, people are going to die, so we might as well just let them all die together. And then everyone wasn't digging that kind of attitude. But then Sweden come out with the same kind of attitude. So I'm thinking, what? Yeah, I'm not being ignorant of it, or I'm not knocking it, but in the short term, we don't have that information at hand. Sorry there, Vanessa, I just want to finish my point. We don't have that information at hand. So making calculated gambles with people's lives, I think is I wouldn't be a fan of it, and I think Sweden should look at it again.
Yeah, but it's sort of like a gamble regardless of what you do, because our economy is not in a great shape, so to speak. I think 50% of the municipalities are borrowing money before the corona crisis to keep the running services. So if we would have a lot of economic casualties for many months, and a lot of companies having to fire a lot of people, we would not be able to sustain the level of healthcare that we have now. So there would be deaths regardless, probably. So it's kind of like, yeah, maybe it is a gamble, but maybe it's also a gamble to close down really hard and lose the ability to finance the services that you can provide now.
Stefan, I think you made a very interesting point about how long people are able to sustain being locked down, because like humans are social animals. We need our interaction, you know, and this is our third week in lockdown, and I'm not seeing anybody. Like, this is a godsend, like technology, Zoom, FaceTime, WhatsApp groups going, but not to be able to have that social connection. Like, I'm a hugger. I love to hug people. I love a good shake hands. I've looked at like I had 10 heads now if I go to shake somebody's hand, and I will be even in next year, 2 years time. People will, I think handshaking will be gone. But I think your point about you know, how sustainable is this lockdown if it is going on 6 more months or 8 more months? I think that is a real problem, a real issue.
I think the idea that it's going to go on even for 2 more months is a scary thought, but the idea of it going on till December is that's beyond thinking about. I mean, that's almost like an extinction event, because no matter how comfortable you are, or even how solid your job is, it can't survive a complete absence or complete lack of growth or for 10 months or 8 months or 6 months. You see, I think at the moment, I don't think the economy it's going to be as drastic as you think, as you're suggesting. You know, like you're describing a nuclear winter almost. I don't think that's going to be the case if we get back in June, July, maybe May, but June, July is what I'm thinking. And obviously major events have had to curtail and push back to next year and such like. But I think the day-to-day, the more mundane 9-to-5 activity, I think most of that will recover. And the activity that doesn't recover is an industry that was on shaky ground anyway. You know, like somebody was telling me this evening about Delta Airlines. Should Delta have been trying to escape their pension problem for decades? Do you know what I mean? Newspapers, I mean, for years people are saying print media is gone. So the more fragile businesses, I think, aren't going to come back. I think everything else is going to come back pretty strong. Much the same way, I think, as a financial year, a reporting year, I think it's going to be like a 9-month trading year or an 8-month trading year, depending on when everything kind of starts to recover. I think our behavior is going to be very different going forward about shaking hands and hugging people. I think we'll be fine when we meet each other, but I think if we're meeting a stranger, I think we'll be kind of a bit funny like that. But just on what's the way Sweden are going about it, and just to kind of put it out there that Sweden have a very different healthcare model than what we have of, you know, sort of in the UK and Ireland very much followed the American model. You know, there's very little now public healthcare. The drive has always been to privatize it, and, you know, to make it less a public service, if you know what I mean. And there has been a severe lack. I think actually one of the biggest telling with the numbers, particularly in the UK, is that it shows a complete lack of investment in public healthcare, in the public healthcare infrastructure that has been going on for over 15-20 years. And I think that's what's driving the numbers at the moment.
So Vanessa, in your celebrity accountant opinion, then, do you think that behind the scenes that the government, we know the HSE is in their right ear, but is there economists in the left ear kind of secretly whispering in the ear, trying to get balance to what should happen in the coming months? And are we looking?
I don't think so. I don't think so, because we're our economy, the Euro economy, EU itself has never faced an environment like this before. So And the talk of it being a recession, you know, it's actually just a period of time that's going to be frozen. And I think if more people start looking at the year ending 2020 as just an 8-month trading period or a 7-month or whatever, however it works out, I think they'll find themselves, they look at their year and they look at their P&L or their trading and income statement. And if they measure it for the activity for the time they were trading and working to, you know, to your normal capacity, they may not be so shook about it. I think if we start looking at things of 2020 not being a full 12-month year, people might start to be a bit more confident. And I think the sort of the job losses, you know, for a lot of people, it's the work has just stopped. The job is still there.
Yeah,
So you're scaring people with that type of talk as well.
I
mean, Marco has enough work to bookings at the moment to keep going for 2 years, and he can't open his front door. Do you know what I mean? Like, you have to look at things like that. The job is not gone. You're putting a fear into an awful lot of people as well, that they're going to start panicking. No, but I mean, generally, that there's all talk about there's going to be a recession and things won't recover and there'd be 2 years to get back on their feet. I don't believe that at all. I think some businesses were shaky anyway, and this has just been the nail in the coffin for them. And I think other businesses will continue as normal, and some will continue to thrive because they'll have found another way, a more efficient way of doing business during this time.
Evolution.
And new businesses will evolve out of it as well.
Yeah.
One thing that, again, has happened here is the Fed have just created $2 trillion to put into the economy, to create another $1.5 trillion to boost up the stock market.
Yeah,
so
it was
I
jobs for the boys.
That couldn't happen. That would lead to inflation, and that money wouldn't be worth anything then. You grow up thinking that money has a certain value, but they could just create all this money, and that sort of says to me, like, they could have created money last year to solve homelessness or to solve the healthcare problems that before this crisis, but they couldn't release the fiscal levers to get that done. Now obviously there's a crisis, and all of a sudden, yes, we can. Like in 2008, they were able to do quantitative easing to give money to the banks, to make the financial liquidity for the banks, and now they have the possibility of giving financial liquidity to people. Like, people don't have to go hungry or lose their homes because of this crisis, because the ECB can, release the levers and they can get cash flowing. Now, eventually, I still believe there's going to be a tab for that somebody's going to have to pick up, and hopefully it'll be the more comfortable, the more well-off people who are able to afford it will actually take the sacrifice, and not the ordinary person who's going out to do a day's work.
Yeah, but you know what? That package that they rolled out last week had, most of it was Democratic Party, what do you call it, pork barrel stuff to get it over the line. Nancy Pelosi had it stocked with bullshit. Do you know? So it's not necessarily whether it gets to the right people. America doesn't actually really have a social welfare net that we have here in Western Europe. Do you know what I mean? And the jobs are, people have 2 and 3 jobs. They're only one rent check away from being out on the street, and they don't have the healthcare infrastructure we have here. And even at that, ours has been completely underfunded for years. And that's why maybe Sweden and Scandinavian countries are able to kind of be a bit more hands off in how they manage the COVID-19 spread, because maybe their population is healthier. I don't have the answer to that, but I also know in Sweden the communities are more rural than they are, say, in the southeast of the UK or even on the east coast in Ireland. and the classroom sizes are much smaller.
Yeah,
Schools are smaller, so it's a very different sort of lifestyle in Scandinavia and in Sweden. In fact, I don't think there's private medical care in Sweden. I don't think you do private medicine. It's a bit like Canada.
We do. Yeah,
Okay.
but it's still just like when it's publicly run, it's still subsidized by the local government. So you're still not paying full price.
Yeah.
Regardless if you're going to a publicly run healthcare facility.
That would be similar to here then. The privates, in the voluntary hospitals, private income subsidizes and vice versa, you know what I mean? Like the consultants here would have private patients staying in the hospital and that would help fund the hospital, So anyway, in Ireland here, the private medicine would be part funded and supported and would help fund the public medicine as well. Like say, a hospital consultant might have a private practice as well as a public practice, but the arrangement would be that consultant's private patients would get their treatment in a public hospital and have their accommodation in a public hospital, and the fees they pay go to the hospital.
Okay, I'm sorry, I'm not quite sure I'm following. It might be because I'm so unfamiliar with a lot of the parts here. I just know that we have a lot of healthcare centers and hospitals that are privately owned, but they operate in the same way as the public ones. And just like the public ones, they get a government subsidy for each patient that they take on and treat. So.
Sorry,
that sounds like the National Treatment Purchase Fund.
Stefan, can I just ask you, Stefan, like something like when I look at, for example, I just wanted you to maybe tell me what you think of this as a Swedish person. Like when I look at New York, for example, and I see the sort of, the makeshift hospitals in Central Park, and I hear that it's only, 1 in 200 people that has the virus in New York, and it seems that they're terribly overwrought, and it'll only get worse. Does that not put the chills up you when you see people walking around the streets in Stockholm?
Well, I mean, I feel pretty certain that it's gonna get really bad. We are not yet at like the worst part of it. There are still some beds left in the hospitals. They are decreasing, but we will have a time in a week or so, and they're putting up tents where they will treat people, and things are going to get pretty ugly.
Yeah. But in terms of the way I look at that, I sort of look at that and I think, well, it seems like it's at a very early stage. I mean, any sort of like herd immunization comes with about 30 to 60% of the people having the virus. But if it's that bad when only like 0.5% of the people in a city have it, I mean, it seems like there's a long way to go. And to me, I'd be thinking, well, you really have to lock down soon,
Yeah, we don't know how many people have it since we're not testing. We stopped testing a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
I just know from like among my friends, I know quite a few who are either having it or has had it. So maybe it's not that low. I'm hoping that the percentage of people who have got it but are not showing any symptoms would be pretty high, because that would make it so that the number of people.
Well, I suppose what I'm saying is, I would guess that it's a worse, like more people have it in New York, and their systems and services are being overwhelmed. So therefore, there's a lot worse to come in Sweden, and the idea of not limiting at this point is a bit sort of scary,
Yeah, I mean, there might be cultural differences also with New York. As said before, it's here we don't live as close to each other as people in New York. We don't visit elderly people a lot compared to Italy, for example, where people tend to live in the same under the same roof a lot more. So it's kind of hard to compare different places.
But Stockholm, for example.
Like I used to work for Ericsson, so I lived in Stockholm for 6 months, and I would say that it's like any other modern city. It's pretty much the same. It's not that different from anywhere. I don't know. I think there's an element of sort of, they talk about like American and British exceptionalism. I think like the Swedes maybe are being a little bit sort of too certain of their perspective, and it scares me.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, there is definitely quite a bit of that. I remember I think it was 2 years ago, when the government sent out a tiny little leaflet on what to do in case of a crisis. Like, it's good to look where your like bomb shelters are and keep some canned food at home. And these are the phone numbers to important places and so on. And I remember seeing in my Facebook feed that so many people got really angry for getting this information, because they were like, why are they scaring us? Obviously nothing bad is going to happen here. So yeah, I think there's quite a bit of that in Sweden, because we've never had, it's been hundreds of years since we've had a war. We don't have a lot of like natural catastrophes here. So I think a lot of people are just taking for granted that nothing bad will ever happen in Sweden, nothing large scale at least. So I think that is a bit of a danger.
But you have a population of 10.5 million. I don't know how many is in Stockholm, and with the
Like
refugee, two. Okay, and with the refugee and asylum situation, you've taken in an awful lot. So, and I take your point that Sweden is, out of all the countries up there, is probably the most sparsest. And I'd say possibly an awful lot of people, because the economy is so good, probably do have a second home that they can retreat to in a lot of cases, especially in Stockholm maybe. But just on the back of Luke's point as well, like, will it get to a point now where you think in Sweden, with the media and such, that they will actually just, the outcry will be what might bring them in? I'm not saying that we're all right either, by the way, because Swedish people have a habit of being very independent and very creative, and a very forward-thinking country. So, but it just seems to be, as I said at the start of it, that Johnson had the same idea, and the people kind of brought, or the human outpour just kind of brought it all back to check. And then they took on drastic measures that leapfrogged them above us, because we were almost ahead of them in relation to what we were doing as precautions. So do you think that might happen in Sweden, basically, is what I'm asking Stefan in a roundabout way? Sorry if I...
well, perhaps not. I don't know if we've like locked ourselves into like, no, we're never gonna do a lockdown. It might happen later on. I think it's possible. I mean, if things go really bad and it's seen as needed, but then it's also like, for how long can people keep it up? I just don't know the correct timing of what to do when. and what would be most efficient. Certainly, if we would have had a lockdown a month ago, I'm pretty sure some people would start to go out a lot now because they would be too tired of sitting at home, and maybe more so in a month's time. I'm not really seeing a big outcry at this moment right now. Some people are calling for more measures to be taken, but it's not in any way unanimous.
Okay, thanks for that, man.
Definitely interesting times ahead. Derek, I'm curious. Did you get your check in the post from the White House yet? Is that
No,
happening?
with Trump's signature on it. No, $1,200 seemingly for people who are earning up to 99,000.
Because
it hasn't arrived yet, but
you're waiting with bated breath. Because I was wondering if you'd lost your mind yet when I saw you wearing a faded Mickey Mouse T-shirt. I was like, Jesus, he's like, shelter in place is getting to him.
That's the fashion. That's not faded. It's a relatively new T-shirt. It's a retro or something like that. I don't know.
So the change gear. Sorry, go ahead.
When people were talking there about Stefan mentioned about the emergency crisis in Sweden, it just reminded me of remember the iodine tablets?
It's iodine tablets, yeah.
Was it Dick Roach? Or am I doing him a disservice?
No, was it Dick Roach? It was it was Dick Roach. Yeah.
In the same year, we got bacon as well, I think, and cheese, didn't we? It was a great year.
But the iodine tablets were going to save us from nuclear fallout or whatever it was.
Marianne Finucane, Lord of Mercy, in her. She dragged it out of him.
What's your interpretation of Ireland, Stefan?
Well, actually, I have been to Ireland not so long ago. I was there in July.
Last
July.
July?
I spent the whole time at an improv camp doing improvised theater. So I didn't see a lot of the country. I was in Dublin. I remember a big statue of some guy named O'Connell, and he was like covered in bird shit for some reason. And I feel like this man deserves a hat.
Yeah.
I didn't have a hat. If I had one, I would donate it to this poor statue. But I guess he probably did something to birds during his lifetime.
There was a statue there to Jim Larkin, socialist Labour union rep, just up the road from Daniel O'Connell, a little bit smaller, but the same thing, bird shit all along his head. And I actually just tweeted, I took a picture and I tweeted it to Dublin City Council. Is there any way you could clean the statues, lads, on O'Connell Street once or twice? I'm sure there's enough cherry pickers up on all these sites now, that are closed. So now might be the time where Dublin City Council, and everything looks pristine. I don't know if you noticed it, that there's no one in the streets now. So it looks really great. And in Venice, the canals are so transparent. You could possibly go down and take €1 million out of the place. But everything looks really good. So I would just say, if there's anyone looking from Dublin City Council there, you heard it there from Stefan, a visitor. He wants the statues cleaned, and I made the point about 2 years ago. So hopefully they might heed now. You'd be surprised who looks at this show, Stefan.
Yeah, but I mean, actually, I think cleaning it would not work because the bird seems to have something against this guy. So I think that has to be a much more
Protestant seagulls, are they?
Solution, because you can just keep the hat on. Otherwise, you would continually have to keep cleaning this guy's head.
Is it not supposed to be good luck, if a bird shits on you? So maybe he's just a very lucky guy.
I can just imagine if Stefan has anything to go by, the Swedish writers of Irish travel books must have very interesting side topics on their interpretation of the country.
It is good look, but it's not a good look, if you know what I mean.
That's right.
Well, I'm glad, Johnny, we have people like you looking out for our statues and informing the DCC that there's
I just
work
said I'd
being
take a
done.
picture, a selfie. I just said I'd take, and it was the first thing that I noticed as well, so I thought it was a bizarre. But yeah, for a statue to have such a presence, surely it has to be maintained, because as I say, seagulls are notorious around Dublin City Centre. Yeah,
You have your platform here, Johnny. I think look straight at the camera and send your message to Dublin City Council.
no one's going to listen to me, but they listen to our humble visitor that has been here. That's the thing. We listen to visitors, Stefan, but we don't actually listen to ourselves. Will you be back? If you come back again, yeah, you have to get outside of Dublin and see more of the place. I recommend Offaly, but I was actually in the process of occupying Offaly before all this happened. But now, when everyone finds out that you can't live in the cities anymore and you want a bit more fresh air and you can't afford to go up to the snowy slopes of Sweden, just go a little bit inland, and that's where you'll find Offaly. There's absolutely nothing there, Stefan. So that's why it could be one of the biggest places ever to come out of this.
Now, Johnny, I think it's a bit of a stretch to compare Offaly to some of the scenic beauty in Sweden.
Okay, Neil. When was the last time you were in Offaly?
Exactly.
There you go. Come down, man. I'll give you a guided tour. It actually is an amazing place, man. And this is why Britain, when they used to run the world, decided that Offaly was going to be the first county they planted. It wasn't in Northern Ireland. It was in Offaly. So there's still castles there, but that's a secondary thing. Neither your fault. You gave me the platform. But anyway, another time. But you're definitely coming down now.
I'll take you up on that when this is all over, Johnny. Maybe we'll do a broadsheet special from Offaly.
Whoa, good that far now. The signal is in great. The signal is in great. Which is another another what you call it another vantage point or great point. It's a tag. It's an acronym, not an acronym. What do they call it? A three letter. A positive anyway.
Acronym, yeah.
No,
TLA.
No, a USP, unique selling point.
Oh.
The USP is there's absolutely no Wi-Fi there, so you can't be looking at your phone the whole time. You have to look up and appreciate the Slieve Blue Mountains and the lovely brown bog. Anyway, I digress. I digress.
You're describing a completely different place than the Offaly.
When was the last time you were in Offaly, Vanessa?
About 4 or 5 weeks ago. I used to be there at least twice a month.
Where were you?
Tullamore.
Tullamore. It's like Dublin, you got to get out from the big towns. I'm talking about in the middle
That's
of
enough.
nowhere.
I see enough of the wildlife in Tullamore.
Yeah. Well, yes, whatever.
Can I just quickly say I was down in Offaly last time I was down. I was down in Tullamore, and someone was telling me that they were listening to the local radio, and the person who was doing the announcement said, unfortunately, there's no obituaries today. So
nobody's dead.
Yeah. There was very disappointing for them altogether. Yeah.
Jesus. Changing gears slightly, because we're all locked indoors and it's very hard to entertain yourself 24/7 for those who don't have the luxury of being able to work right now. So I'm wondering what you folks are indulging on streaming on Netflix and Prime Video and Apple TV and all that. What's been keeping you occupied? Any recommendations for the masses? Vanessa, you're usually good at it. Or Johnny, so you're going to jump in there. I know Vanessa probably has a load of stuff she's going to tell us about.
If you don't mind starting, I was going to say for the sporting fans out there's not a bit of sport on, but Netflix have a great series called Sunderland Till I Die, and it follows the trials and tribulations of Sunderland Football Club in England, and they've just released season 3 or series 3 now. But it's one of the best sporting documentaries you could see because it's really fly in the wall. The cameras have got great access, and it really tells the story. And it's been a sort of a very sad story for Sunderland for the last 3 seasons. They came down from the Premier League. I won't spoil the program.
Is Niall Quinn in it?
No, Niall Quinn is not in it. No, but it's just it looks at the situation from the perspective of the fans, perspective of the players, the owners, and it's really like it's a fly in the wall documentary.
The accent must be brilliant, though. I love
however,
that accent. Yeah. Man.
But I promise you, there's a brilliant
Sunderland.
song.
I'll put that on the list.
There's a brilliant song at the start. The theme tune is "If You Could See Me Now" by, I think they're called the Shipyards, and it's worth it for the song alone. Well, if you watch two episodes, you'll be hooked.
Well, I love that whole scene, that accent, the whole, sort of the northeast in the UK.
Sunderland till I die.
That'd be good fun.
I'll
tell you.
Sorry,
one thing we came across the other day was the Righteous Gemstones. John Goodman is in it. Have you seen it?
Yeah.
Yeah, loved it. Well, I'd watch anything with John Goodman.
Danny McBride
totally
as well.
underestimated. Yeah, Danny McBride wrote it.
Yeah, very good.
Yeah. So it was great to see him in front of the camera again. Yeah, I highly recommend that. Yeah.
Is that on Netflix, Vanessa? Or where did you see that?
I can't remember.
Oh, right. If you anything else you've been watching, Vanessa, you've always got the lowdown on the reality TV and all that.
No, I don't.
Have you been watching The Tiger King? Everyone's talking about The Tiger King. Have you been watching that?
No, I might start on that now. I might start on that. But what did we make of we didn't get a chance to talk about the Oscar movies this year.
Oh, that's old news now.
Is it old news now?
Just to go back a little bit, I mean, I have to say, like, Better Call Saul, the Breaking Bad prequel, I think that's amazing. I think it's the best piece of TV since The Wire. I just think he's
in Little Women.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. He is. Yeah, he's very good.
That's still up on Netflix.
Are you guys watching The Guards inside?
Oh, the K.
District K. The K.
Oh, it's very stark, isn't it?
I only found out about it yesterday. We watched 3 episodes last night. Very good. It's very well made program.
Yeah.
It's on Player, is it?
No, I had to do it on YouTube.
Okay.
Do you know what? Maybe we should just have a moment's silence for all the RTE stars that are catching the virus.
And there you go, Vanessa. We just had it there. We just had it there. There's a couple of things that I've watched or that are out there. Obviously, Disney Plus launched in Ireland, and The Mandalorian was the thing people were getting excited about. I think anyone who wanted to see it has probably seen it by now. But it's the TV series directed by Jon Favreau, which is about the Mandalorian character, and he looks like Boba Fett for all you old school Star Wars fans. It very much plays out. Well, it kind of changes genre as it goes on, but it's kind of like a Western, Star Wars Western. I didn't like it. I don't know if any of you guys watched it, but I watched every episode.
It's Star Wars and a Western.
It has a Western feel to it. The feel of a Western.
Stop it.
But I wasn't a fan of it.
I never saw Star Wars.
Ah, Derek, you've never seen Star Wars.
Do you know what, Derek? Now you're late on that one because I've never seen Star Wars either.
Okay, none of them. Yeah.
Derek, a man of your age.
So there's no news in that one, Derek.
Okay, well, we're on the same team there.
Did you hear, Derek? The Democratic Convention has been put off. It was supposed to be. Yeah, they've put it off. I wonder if they had a candidate, would they have just stuck to their guns? But yeah, they've pushed it back.
Well,
there won't be an election in November.
They can. No, they can have an election because some of the states only do postal votes. Oregon, just up from you there. They just do you know lad there? they that's all postal vote. The Yanks are very equipped for postal votes.
If there's no election, if for whatever reason there's no election, if the election has to be postponed, I think the Speaker of the House assumes the responsibility of the President.
Oh Jesus!
Yeah, I have to.
I have to say,
I think at this stage, all this is probably leaning towards like Trump doing well, like I think Vanessa made a very good point there about, sort of like actually this year is going to be a bit of a write-off, and people look at it as a sort of 7 to 8 month year and not expect too much from it. And it kind of gets people like Trump off the hook, because like it doesn't really matter whether your economy like tanks by 5% or 15%. They just say, well, it's not my fault, and they'll get on to other things. The same for like Boris Johnson and people like that as well. I think the economy is a sort of like, they sort of all get a pass on it now, don't they?
Well, the economy is what's made. The health is what makes a society. Is it its economy, or is it the well-being of its people? Your health is your wealth. That's what we say in Ireland, But in actual fact, when we were in good times, the health suffered. So all the nurses, all the care workers, all the SNAs, all the doctors, everyone associated on the front line of the care, didn't really get much recognition. And I'd be interested to hear what way they're treated in Sweden, Stefan. And I know what way they're treated in America, Derek. But it's like, they're the new heroes. Everyone's saying that, but we really have to make sure that they are and pay them accordingly. Because if we don't have these people, they're not being paid accordingly, obviously, right now.
Hang on a second, Johnny. No, I mean, I was a financial controller of a major hospital. I can tell you, in Ireland, medical care, they do tend to be far better paid than they would be in the NHS. Now, student nurses know that new rule came in about 5 or 6 years ago. But a nurse starting in Ireland, let's just say 10, 15 years in.
Okay, right.
Is paid way more than she would or he would get in the NHS. Irish hospital consultants get paid way more here. If you're on the original hospital consultant contract here,
that's not my point.
You would but you're saying they're not getting paid. In Ireland, they generally were well paid.
What happened in Ireland? I said.
No, but what happened in the NHS? They're not paid well at all. And in America, it's shameful how badly paid their nurses are, right? But in Ireland, though, we made when the nurses were put out on the street to strike, that's when our healthcare fell apart. I think. Well, it was Brian Cowan was the minister. When they went out on the street to strike, he turned it into a job, and that's when our sort of what was known as our healthcare system,
sort of vocational element.
Yeah. And and the way nurses qualified back then was different as well, and so they've changed sort of the culture around the provision of healthcare in Ireland, but it's by no means not a badly paid job.
It's a badly paid job in relation to what. Okay, for example, you dealt with the two things I said there. I want to really talk about care workers, okay, care assistants, shelf packers, lorry drivers, van drivers, just ordinary jobs. They're real jobs. They're real jobs, and in America, they have special names for them. In Ireland, they're kind of look down your nose jobs, and that's always been the culture. That's always been the culture in relation to, and now these people are actually doing a service. Bankers are always irrelevant. And let's make sure that they're not that relevant when we do get back on our feet. IT has a certain purpose, doesn't have the same purpose as frontline staff have. So all these things, we have to take into perspective exactly what defines a person. If they are defined by their job, let's give them serious numeration for that, rather than a pat on the back and all praise and no pay, which is a concept in relation to how some sports in Ireland operate, and that spills into to job creation. There's real people doing real jobs. They're not middle management, and the HSE is full of middle management, and that's where one of the major problems in the HSE lies. So let's make sure, because we've already got the private hospitals back now as well.
You're only leasing them back.
No. We have them back.
No, you don't, Johnny.
Oh, definitely, 100%.
They've only leased them. They've only leased them. Johnny, stop it. They've only leased them for a certain period of time.
Yeah, but sure, but we need them going forward, regardless of the crisis. The health system was in crisis before this happened, Vanessa.
But
massively.
Welcome to 20 minutes ago.
Yeah, but sure, that's what I'm saying. Someone made the point that all of a sudden, when we wanted to get stuff done, we couldn't. But then when the crisis happened, you see how everything kicks into gear. This week, everyone is pulling together. Team Ireland again, and Leo is up with the press releases and all that. He didn't once ask the AIB to pull back from their €100 charge. The first week, and once again, Stefan, sorry if you can understand what I'm saying. It'd be great to hear the way Sweden would possibly deal with the banks. If I give you the situation, and this is completely how America would do it, but in Ireland, everyone is pulling together for this crisis, so everyone's been given €350. It might be 200 if you're on social welfare, but if you lost your job, I think it's up to 350. And the first week that this came in, the AIB, which is I think 80% owned by the Irish people, the bank, and they slapped the charge of €100 for their quarterly fees. And Leo Varadkar, our Taoiseach, did nothing about that. And only for, I think, what's his face, Pierce Stotter, the Sinn Féin spokesman on finance, made a big song and dance about it, that I think has kind of been retracted, or hasn't even been retracted yet. So that's more of how the financials and the main guys that are running the country aren't all about Team Ireland. I just wanted to throw that in there.
Well, it was actually 3 weeks ago. Well, it was all over the papers 3 weeks ago of them going in and getting the permission to up the fees. All the banks got it. They were pictured all over the papers. If you look at the papers of the week before Patrick's Day, you'll see pictures of all the bank heads going in to the Department of Finance. And it's not Leo's job to comment on it. He's a Minister for Finance. He has a Minister for Finance called Pascal Donoghue and a Department of Finance.
Okay,
and
hang
on now.
What do you say about
and they have a Central Bank of Ireland. That's their job. That's their job.
What do they do about it?
Because the bank, hang on, for a start, right? The bigger problem with AIB and Bank of Ireland here is their AGM was supposed to be the end of the month, and they were promising over 400 million in dividends. All right, you're getting caught up in what's red meat, Johnny. You're not looking at you are because you hear me out now. You hear me out. But they were declaring dividends to their shareholders of over 400 million to be approved at their AGM in 3 weeks' time. Now, granted, the AGM is cancelled, right? But their profits at the moment are tax-free. So, the state will get about 75% of that dividend back. Fair enough. And Bank of Ireland get to hang on to theirs. The fees were being spoken about for ages, and they got approved because banks need to be sustainable. And at the moment, the banks are running at a regulatory reserve of somewhere between 5 and 6%, and that's under pressure. And the credit unions have to keep in and around 10 or 11%, and that's costing us a fortune. That's what's making us unsustainable. That's what's making it unsustainable. So, the interest rates, the provision of financial services.
Yeah, but
the interest rates are not paying the way. They're not keeping it going.
Everyone is in the crisis in Europe, for example. The ECB have given the percentage. It's not going to. We're not going to pass it on to the central bank in Ireland, but the central bank in Ireland and AIB have somewhere decided that they are actually going to do the charge. So I just see greed again. You know, when we talk about this thing called greed. But all the banks
are bringing it in. They're all bringing it in. What's the charge on for AIB?
AIB is owned by the state, as is Bank of Ireland, primarily. We bailed them out. We bailed them out. Okay, if you go back to 2008, the crash of 2008, and this is another crash. It mightn't be economic. It is actually economical. It's financial. It's social. It's a bigger crash than 2008. And if we don't learn anything from 2008 in relation to how we operate, we are the economy. We decide what the economy is. Not world banks, not the Federal Reserve, which is owned by five families in America that print all this money. I'm not telling you something you already don't know. But I just want to have an open debate and discussion about that. If we are coming together as Team Ireland, once again, the greedy bastards are looking for fucking to capitalize on this, and I'm here
Johnny,
to call it out anyway.
Johnny,
I
first of all,
think,
you have to
Johnny,
stop saying it's a crash. You have to stop saying that, because that's what
No,
that's
no,
what
you're not listening to what I
creates
said.
the
You're not listening to what I
decisions.
said. You know what I said? There was a crash in
Johnny,
2008, and outside of this,
You just said this was another crash.
but so it is. As
Johnny,
it is now, it is a crash, and how bad that crash is going to be, it depends on how we pull these guys into line, the banks. And Leo Varadkar ain't going to do it, and neither is O'Donoghue. But Pierce, what's his face? Pierce Doherty was very quick to pull him in, and an awful lot of people are lining up to hear what he has to say, because they're giving out. And he actually did a good podcast, because this is interesting as well. The national broadcaster refused to talk to Sinn Féin, gives them a platform. But guess what? Because we can all have a platform now. We are the media. Pierce O'Doherty interviewed David McWilliams on the Sinn Féin website. And I recommend, Vanessa, if you haven't already, listen to that podcast. It's very interesting.
Johnny,
Well, if you don't have a solid banking system, you have no economy.
Let's just let Derek. Sorry, guys. Let's
Sorry,
just Derek's trying to come in there.
Yeah, no problem. I think what Johnny's point was, he's talking about when this is over, a reorganization of society, really, like where that different types of jobs get more, are given more value, or more kudos, more recognition. That's the word I was looking for. Thank you. And that we stopped valuing like the Tesla and the BMW, and we started appreciating the jobs that a lot of us wouldn't do, that are essential for the country, essential for society. So I think that's what he's talking about. I think he's trying, like, it's like, okay, if we can't just go back to the way things were, right, where there's this growing inequality between the certain groups in society who are doing really well and leaving everybody else behind. I read a book, 21 Lessons for the 21st Century, best-selling author from Israel. Anyway, he makes a point that with the advent of all the technologies that we have with big data and information technology, info tech, and then with biotechnology, and this might sound science fi-ish, but he was trying to look forward what's going to happen in the next century. And he talks about the emergence of superhumans who have access to biotech, where they can program themselves or inject themselves with whatever they need. And these people, these superhumans, are the ones who are going to be really wealthy and control the economy and control all these industries. And he said, what you're going to have is this like useless class. And the useless class of people weren't people with no education and no skills. They were people like doctors that AI would replace. There were people like accountants that AI would replace. People like bank managers. People like physical fitness trainers that can all be done with AI. He makes a compelling case, but if he's right in what he's saying about this creation of this, like, where humans are going to be displaced by AI, this now is a good time to try and reorganize society and allow people to do things that are valuable. Maybe do something like we're doing here now, something creative, or learning guitar, or learning to dance, and helping people, getting involved in their community, helping older people, helping young kids, and that it might be a real blessing in disguise if AI does take these jobs and we can create a society with a greater safety net through things like universal basic income and universal services, and that the future could be actually brighter if we make the changes. Now, I know that sounds very science fiction-y, but there is huge developments happening in artificial intelligence and in biotechnology.
Just to back up your point there a little bit. I mean, even if you forget about AI, if you think that like since 1970, like the world has become twice as efficient. You know, that's what they say. That the amount of man hours taken to feed, house, and water the whole of the world is half as many man hours. So that's why you have all this huge growth in sort of sociology and sort of arts courses and all this, you know, like basically there's half as many people needed to run the world now, you know, so it's you know, without any need for AI, you know, that's where we're going.
Yeah, but guys, if you look at the numbers that you're saying that you know, that signed up for the COVID payment, that were out of work, there were, like, if you really think about it, it just shows how important human labor is. If we were that committed to an AI economy, you wouldn't have such an impact of that, the numbers of people having to sign on to social welfare. It actually shows how important having you know, a labor workforce is to our economy. It's, you know, and I mean, during the last general election, Norma Burke had a very good part in her manifesto about having a minister for small to medium-sized businesses, because in an AI economy, you know, 70% of the small to medium-sized businesses are artists, they're cafes, they're bakers, which is 70% of our workforce. So she was making a case for having a minister specifically for this. While the AI economy is getting all the attention and the money and the investment, it's still only 30% of our workforce. So like you're saying about people being creative and finding a different way to work, and you said about you know, getting things done is more efficient now, Luke, right? But that lends to the American position at the moment, where the majority of people hold 2 or 3 jobs, you know. Yeah. And like the actually only today, I think Europe are now coming up with an idea of having a universal payment, but they're coming up with this special bond, an investment bond of some sort, to have an income, I think, of a minimum of, I think it's $1,200 a month into every household in Europe. Now it's still just being talked about, but I mean, the idea that you're talking about the AI and artificial intelligence and a robotic society and stuff, it just shows the numbers of people that are locked in. They spread. The numbers of people that have had to sign on for payments, whether it's the social welfare here or what they call it in the UK, the numbers there. Our social welfare systems are very close together. You can transfer from one to the other, like, do you know what I mean? And it just shows actually the amount of, like, the labor workforce, how important it is. And when this lockdown happened, it was actually the labor workforce that it impacted the most, not the banks, not the utility companies. It's the labor workforce. And that's the sort of, the real pressure is on the labor workforce. Will they still be around when the economy comes back, when we're all back full steam? Will they not say, feck it, I'm going to Australia now, I've had a break, I don't want to go back to that job, you know? You know, the way people will work from going forward will be very different. They'll want very different careers.
Yeah. But I suppose if you even go back 30 years and you think, well, 30 years ago, I mean, how would the people, I mean, like, so now you have 80% of people can somehow work from home, you know, and now, but like 30 years ago, that would have been a third of it, you know? So it's all going that direction, right?
Yeah, I think the way people go about earning their living will probably be different now when we come out of all this. But to not forget, I think we need to remember that it's actually the workforce. It just shows how many people are actually doing the jobs, and it's not AI. It's not artificial intelligence. It's not robotic.
I think that speaks to Johnny's point about giving those people the recognition that they deserve. That the people stocking the shelves in the supermarket and serving us when you go in to buy your groceries, like we're limiting our trips to the grocery store to get our stuff. But those workers are there every day.
Yeah,
and they deserve more a higher status or a greater recognition like what Johnny was saying.
What we should do is get rid of, forbid 0-hour contracts.
Absolutely.
But that's the way to do that.
The point the man was making about AI in his book, his name is Harry. It's a very good book, 21 Lessons for the 21st Century. The point he was making about it was it's coming to everybody. It's like people think of AI replacing the like self-service checkout, right? And sort of those things that we can all imagine that are sort of already on the way to being automated anyway. Going to the ATM instead of going to a teller in the bank, all that sort of stuff. That's all already happened. But he makes a compelling case as to why AI would be better than doctors, for example, because he said you could have like a network, right? If you're not happy with the first opinion from your AI doctor, you can get a second opinion from an AI doctor. But because they're all connected in a network, these AI doctors will actually be smarter than the human doctors. And he says when a new thing develops, and you can just reboot the whole system, and all the doctors will have the information. So he's making this case that whether you're a bank manager giving out mortgages, that could be done more effectively and efficiently by AI. So I don't want to.
No, you're right, Derek.
He makes a really good argument, way better than I'm trying to make it here now. But the point was that all these jobs that we think now are the essence of our humanity, like that. Well, I have to be able to make a decision, or I have to bring my humanity to it. He argues that even those jobs, that because artificial intelligence is becoming so advanced that it will overtake what we think at the moment are essential human qualities.
This is where the money is going. Just on that part. Sorry, Luke. Just on AI, with anything, you follow the money, and the amount of money that's in AI. That is the future, whether we like it or not. It's like internet. When the internet happened, IT became an industry, and then it became a necessity. And now we can't do without it. And you made the point, Luke, 30 years ago, we would never have thought that we would have the internet and would have such an impact on our life. And is that for the greater good? That's debatable as well. But going back to my initial point in relation to Team Ireland or Team America or Team Sweden, who still runs it? Capitalism is really under the microscope here. I've never been a communist. I like the idea of a socialist society where you get the basics. You get your basic human rights, and then after that, then if you work hard, you deserve your rewards. I've always been about that, and I think that mentality is almost changing now. Anyway, so with AI happening, fucking great, man. Let's have the computers, the machines working for us, which gives us more time. And what are we entitled to do with that time? Do we also have to be cyborgs? Because that's the way it's going. So we have to make that decision ourselves, and our leaders. We have to make sure the right leaders do what's good for us, not what's good for the corporations.
I was going to just ask Derek that, what did he say in the book? What did he say we would end up doing?
Well, he talks about
moving Joffrey.
Empty canvas.
He talks about this idea of trying to have a welfare state, but with a universal basic income. Having a really good safety net with a universal basic income as and universal basic services as well. That he goes in a bit to talk about what he means by universal and what he means by basic, but that's the basic thing is he thinks it could be a blessing in disguise for humanity if people were freed up to do the things that I mentioned, freed up to mind their old age parents, freed up to spend more time with their kids, freed up to spend more time in their communities and in their societies, doing the things that people want to do, following their passion, coaching football teams, playing music. And his argument was that it could be a blessing in disguise if we move away from the rat race, move away from the the notion that you have to work 60 hours a week and you have to like chase that bonus or whatever.
I have to say that like it's one thing that I've felt that could be a positive out of this whole sort of current quiet period is that you know, I do think people generally were a bit too tied up in the whole capitalism and, you know, with particularly with consumerism as a reward for their behavior. I think it's a bad carrot, and it's like having time to sort of step back and think about it a little bit is good for us all.
So, on that note, I think we can't wrap up without some level of positivity and some sense of hope from the panel.
I've got positivity.
Right, Johnny, over to you.
I wanted to say it before. It's more of a plug, really, but it's positivity. But and Vanessa, everyone has kind of said that there's jobs have been lost. A friend of mine is a publican. He says he worked for 43 years to end up on the dole. You know, so you know that just it's tongue in cheek, but you know it says a lot too. You know that you work hard, you didn't expect nothing, and then all of a sudden you have to sign up to be on the dole. Then there's other people on the dole who will never have any interest in getting work. But I'm fortunate to know an awful lot of musicians, and they're having a hard time, and they really have to kind of, you know, think on their feet. And something like this, web gigs, is the short-term solution. And there's a guy, Derek Clabby. We had him on, he featured on the sheet before. He's from Dublin, Kilbarrack, and he set up the King Sativa, fantastic reggae ska band in 2000. His brother Damo Clabby was in it. Unfortunately, Damien died, and the band disbanded, I think, in 2003. But Derek is living in Poland now with his lovely wife and 2 kids, and he's doing a great a song a day. Talk about positivity, Neil Curran. You wake up in the morning and he's either singing something like Jimmy Cliff or Bob Marley or one of his own repertoire, but he does that. That's Del Bionic, and that's on Facebook. You can check it out. And he's also gone to the hassle, and it is a hassle. If anyone who admins a Facebook page will know, it's not just setting it up. You have to keep an eye on it and all that. And he set up Dublin or live gig streaming. Let me make sure that I have that right. A streaming gig guide. Okay, so any Irish bands particularly that have gigs, they can go to streaming gig guide and he'll put it up for them. And he's doing a show on Sunday, which is exclusively King Sativa. So this band hasn't played in a long time, you know. They disbanded in 2003, and their music stands the test of time. They got 2 albums online on Bandcamp. It's King Sativa if they want to check it out. But I think, and within all that, other acts are looking to, if you want to donate, go fund and all that, which is really good. But Derek, his parents passed on, but they used St. Francis Hospice in Raheny, and he wants people to donate to that. So that's a short-term thing that people can tap into, and it's really positive because he's given a platform to other artists who can't make a living from live gigs. And there's also a good hospice there, a good charity that need that money, and you're listening to good positive vibrations coming from a Dublin man in Poland. So I think that's very positive. Derek Clabby, I couldn't endorse him enough. He's very good. So thanks for that, Neil.
Thank you.
Thanks, Johnny. Anyone else got any positivity, good neuse, things they want to share?
Well,
good news. I don't know. What did you? No, there's not so much good news and stuff, but I just think if like I've just seen the title, the splash there on the Examiner, tomorrow's Examiner is 25% will be out of jobs by the summer, and I there's this deliberate push of the doom and gloom. I think if we just stick to this thing in our heads, all right, 2020 is just an 8-month year. We're cocooned for 4 months of it, or was it? I think we'd be a bit more optimistic about it. And then we're getting. Hopefully, this is a once in a lifetime opportunity that we get to kind of discover all new things about ourselves. Whether it's reading books you've never read before, or listening to music you've never listened to before, or trying something new like baking, or I was trying to convince Neil to bake bread last week or the week before. Or, you know, people might find something totally new about themselves they didn't know that they, even cycling or walking, or, you know, I think they should take it this time that they may not get again at home, to do something different and discover something about themselves. And I really don't like I really want people to stop talking about losing jobs and the bad banks and everything. There's no banks, there's no recovery, you know. So I just want people to be more optimistic about their welfare in the long run, rather than, oh, the world is ending, I'd be better off catching it.
Yeah, like I think as well, there is a positive in terms of, like, the quarantine sort of gives you a bit of a pass on, like, you can just say, I'm losing my mind. You can do all the crazy shit you always wanted to do all your life. Now is your free card to do all that. Everyone's got stuff that they wanted to do and didn't have time to do it. You know, that big long list of things. One thing I found, actually, I mean, there was one or two things I started doing an online course there during the week, and like. But one thing I found actually is that, like, even changing around the time of day you do things, you know, it's like finding that when you're at your best during the day and using that time to sort of try new stuff, I found is very helpful, you know. But just playing around with it, because it really is. I mean, the world's, like, you know, is made bigger by doing new and interesting things.
Can I just give a shameless plug for my shameless plug for my own blog? I got that.
I read it today.
It's called, thank you, theirishguy.org, and the tagline is "Living the Dream." It's basically came over to California. Everyone kept referring to me up around my daughter's school or wherever I went as the Irish guy, and everybody at home kept telling me I was living the dream. And basically, so that's sort of the idea. I'm just basically trying to document what life is like over here, and it's basically things that I'm interested in. But I'd love to get some feedback from you guys about what you think of some of the articles that I put up or whatever. So it's the irishguy.org.
Check that out. Do you pay in houses?
I'm on Twitter. Yeah,
I gave you a follow.
Did you? Thank you.
Thanks, Derek. Stefan, a view from Sweden. Have you any good news, positivity, something you want to share with us?
Well, I think one positive thing that could come out of this is that I think more people after this would probably appreciate the economy more, and the effort of running a small business, or all the effort that a lot of people put into doing the things that they're doing every day. I'm seeing already now a lot of theaters that are on the verge of closing down, and restaurants and other small businesses struggling. And I think after this is over, I think a lot of people will feel more strongly about their local community and their local businesses.
That sounds very much like a plug for you, Vanessa, looking out for the businesses and the economy. Thanks, Stefan.
But it's in my financial interest for people to go bankrupt.
There you go. You had to ruin the positivity by saying that.
I had to ruin it all. But we were just talking about theatres, and Johnny was talking about gigs and all that stopped. You know, I think when the restrictions are lifted and everyone can go back out, I can honestly see people going out of their way now to go to theatres, to go to gigs, to go to events, to go to restaurants. Yeah, I can see that actually happening. I can see everybody rowing in behind it.
Yeah. The boom will get boomier.
Yeah,
the boom will get boomier.
I do, because I do honestly think, because like the majority, this affects the labour workforce. It's not affecting business at all.
Like everything we do will feel better, you know, after, you know, if you take something away from people, as soon as they get it back, they feel great, you know. I mean, how good is it going to be to have that first pint, or to go out to that first show, or just go out with your partner and
first
have a nice meal, you know, to be going off at random or in the pub, whatever you're doing.
Yeah, the slow set. See, they know what the most tragic thing is. Like the slow set is going to be gone.
Yeah.
The slow set went a long time ago, Vanessa.
Not the last time I went dancing.
Exactly. That was 19 what? on that
how do you
cheery
explain,
note.
how do you explain a slow set to a Swedish man?
Sorry?
Although Sweden is the hit factory of all the slow set songs now, isn't that fair to say?
What is a slow set song?
Oh Jesus!
The slow set
let me
song.
see.
Go on, Johnny. You explain it, Johnny. Go on.
No.
I'm trying
Let
to
the
think of a
improv guy
Swedish
do it.
song. Oh yeah, exactly. Let the improv guy do it.
Let the improv guy explain the slow set, the clinger. Go on.
You want me to
Nick.
explain it?
Yeah.
That's because
Improvise.
that's because Vanessa's so rusty on the slow set because she hasn't been to the discos in so long. Stefan, it's when you're in a club and there's music playing and the DJ slows things down and plays, slow music that you can squidge up beside someone and get an old kiss or a wear or a shift. I don't know what the Swedish slang for kissing.
Something like
somebody
Roxette. A Roxette song maybe might work.
Roxette song.
Oh yeah.
Must have been love.
He's there going, who the fuck are these people?
Well, on the song thing, Sweden is actually the hit factory of most of the songs that's played in the charts, Stefan.
Yeah, we're disproportionately well
That's where ABBA's
represented.
from, Is Sweden where ABBA are from?
Yeah.
Yeah, and Roxette, but mostly almost all hit songs, it feels, are produced by Swedish people like Max Martin and others. Well,
you're going to have to sing one of them now.
Oh, I would probably not do that to all of your viewers because their ears would probably fall off.
It never stopped us before.
Healthcare professionals would have even more to do.
Yeah.
Okay.
On that note, it's getting late, lads. It's time for bed. I want to thank our panel tonight. Let's see if we can turn on the panel button. I forgot to do that earlier. I want to thank all of our panelists tonight. Luke Brennan all the way from Porto. Johnny Keenan in Kilkenny, but flying the flag for Offaly. He's not allowed to go back there, though, because of lockdown. Vanessa Foran building a moat around Crumlin. Derek O'Donoghue rolling in the check, the government
Irishman.
the irishguy.org, and Stefan Anderson, our guest tonight, all the way from Stockholm, Sweden.
It's Henry Shefflin lookalike.
The poor Stefan's going to be traumatized after all this. John Ryan assures us he'll be back next week when his Wi-Fi, as they say, will be fixed. We were going to look at the papers, and then I looked at the papers, and I said, we can't go back to the papers.
Yeah.
If you want to know what's in the papers, read them tomorrow. Don't read them tonight.
No, read last week's papers.
Read last year's papers. So thank you all for tuning in, dialing in, and whatever you're up to this weekend, stay indoors, have a great time. Send us some fan mail. This has gone to our heads. We're egomaniacs now. Vanessa's.
Hey, I'll give you a laugh. I'll give you something now. Something really positive. Do you know who's going to be a dad at 89 years of age?
Here.
Yeah. Do you remember? You know your man, the Formula One guy, Bernie Ecclestone. Yeah. He's having sex at 89 years of age. He's getting his rock and roll at 89. And
there's the positivity story we needed now. There you go.
This is what happens. No, but I'm just saying this out. But something's happening when people are cocooning.
Well, there you go.
There is going to be a huge baby boom. You know that? There's going to be loads of Christmas babies. Don't be looking at me now.
Oh, God. Thank you all.
We'll all be in Korea for the wedding.
Oh yeah, that's it. We're going to remind Luke Brennan every week that he is getting married.
Flights would be cheap though, won't they? Now, if we booked them.
If there is flights, yeah.
Will her crowd push us up? They will.
Put you up, definitely.
We could do the show from the wedding. We could actually do a live broadcast.
Oh, Korean wedding, a South Korean wedding.
Yeah.
I've got the garb and all sorted out for that. Yeah.
What are you wearing? Is he going to be the big frills?
Like traditional Korean sort of silk suit.
Lovely.
Very good.
You always had style, Luke.
Well, it was like a traditional suit that my future brother-in-law sort of wore for his wedding, and So my fiance and her sister are about the same size, and her husband and me are about the same size. So we're just going to use their
What
wedding
color?
It's
Is it
yellow,
white?
yellow and white,
Yellow.
and it's
Like the
it's,
Pope?
it's very elaborate. Yeah, it's like a, if
I
you
can
imagine
hear. Is it the the way they like the MC Hammer pants? Like
it's
you
kind of
wear
like
the
exactly,
bangles.
yeah, kind of like that.
Okay.
Yeah. If you look up like Hangok traditional outfits from Korea, like you'll see the traditional sort of style, but it's it's pretty elaborate indeed.
And do they do the hats like if we
I
go out
don't
now?
think I have a hat, but why wouldn't I sort one out, right?
I'm talking about myself.
All right, okay, yeah. But I could get a sombrero or something.
Well, I tell you, if my roots get any worse, I'll be wearing hats pretty shortly.
So good night from us. Stay safe, and we will be back real soon with another show. Thank you.
Night, everyone.
See you, Neil. Thanks, Neil.